This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. Make sure you subscribe to our Substack so you don't miss any episodes. Today we're going to talk about Speaker Kevin McCarthy and how enduring humiliation might be his secret power. Speaker Kevin McCarthy took repeated victory laps over his alleged debt ceiling victory, and the press obliged. He was hailed as underrated, brilliant, masterful, and more, even though the debt ceiling deal was only accomplished with the help of the Democrats. Yet again. There were a lot of bad takes. Democrats rescued McCarthy from his own hostage-taking, but he got press like, quote, underestimated McCarthy emerges from debt deal empowered as Speaker. McCarthy earns the speakership, has strengthened his grip on power during the debt ceiling fight. Speaker Kevin McCarthy has shown abilities no one thought he had. This principle was brilliantly implemented by Speaker McCarthy's debt ceiling strategy. Kevin McCarthy earned his stripes as Republican Speaker. So McCarthy inhaled all of that hot air and announced giddily that his next agenda was to root out wokeness in government. No new $4 billion FBI building, secure the border. So, wokeness, you have been put on notice along with law enforcement. Yes, that's Republicans putting you on notice, law enforcement. But record scratch. Then, in less than a scaramucci, which is about 10 days, it all went away again. Over an attempt to bring to the floor the Gas Stove Protection and Freedom Act. You're probably thinking, but the freedom of gas stoves has been on everyone's mind, even though we know their freedom wasn't at risk, ever, because we operate in a fact-based universe. How could this super unimportant non-issue of prohibiting the use of federal funds to ban gas stoves that no one has said they were going to do ever been opposed? What would cause McCarthy's own caucus to slap him publicly as he was bragging about, quote, turning the ship, unquote? Because the House majority is so small, if Representative Matt Gaetz, for example, or three of his friends, decided to do so, they could block every bill from coming to the House floor for a vote. McCarthy would then need Democrats to help him launch Republicans' frequently kind of bonkers bills, like this one. So how did McCarthy go from being this alleged brilliant strategist to having his own caucus refuse to allow a vote on a bill to stop something that isn't even real? Reactionary nihilist, watch and learn. It was Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, Republican, who brought his concern to the table along with 10 other House nihilist reactionaries who identify as the Freedom Caucus, although no one has ever confirmed that they are indeed pro-freedom for anyone who isn't a white conservative. But that's how they identify, so we will call them by their chosen pronoun, if you will. So Gaetz crossed the aisle to join Democrats to block 2 gas stove bills. Priorities for Republicans, because they did this because they're so mad about the debt ceiling deal for which McCarthy is taking these victory laps. Apparently, they can read, and yet McCarthy didn't anticipate that they would. So Gaetz et al. Took their fury to the press, having learned the real lesson from the decade plus of Republican debt ceiling hostage taking. If you want something you can't get and shouldn't have because the people denied you the numbers to get what you want, just take a hostage. And they found out. The angry right found out the truth about the deal, and they're not happy. After McCarthy managed to sell conservatives on pretending that they got a good deal, McCarthy was hailed as brilliant, and many bad takes that we've already talked about were served about how he has proven himself someone to contend with over this deal. The same deal in which they prioritized rolling back IRS enforcement funding, which, if implemented according to their hopes, would actually increase the debt by billions. They fought this hard to increase the debt by billions. To add insult to that injury, the great victory of Republicans was to force more people off of SNAP through more work requirements. They call this freedom. But that too will increase federal spending by $2.1 billion over 10 years because the added benefits that were pushed by Democrats will add almost 80,000 people to the rolls in an average month. So while they got what they asked for on paper, in the wash, it really turned out that Democrats added 80,000 people to the rolls in an average month. Almost 80,000. I don't think that we could really say that Kevin McCarthy's great at deal making. He's great at being rescued. And that's what the debt ceiling really was. But these Republican self-identified Freedom Caucus people, they don't trust McCarthy, and now they're going to demand something in writing. Unfortunately, 2 weeks a deal was made, and it broke away what we had made, Representative Chip Roy told reporters. Gates said, "We took down the rule because we're frustrated at the way the place is operating. We are concerned that the fundamental commitments that allowed McCarthy to assume the speakership have been violated. They demand that Speaker Kevin McCarthy put in writing that he will go back to their January agreement or else." It is undeniable humiliation. It was a historic humiliation. It's been more than 2 decades since the House voted against a rule. 2 decades. But it happened on Tuesday to Kevin McCarthy. As we wrote on Politicus USA, McCarthy might have saved face with the debt ceiling deal, but he already gave his critics everything to get the gavel. So the only thing left that his opponents could possibly want is for Kevin McCarthy to not be Speaker of the House any longer. Things were so humiliating that Beltway types like Jake Sherman wrote, "An incredible embarrassment for the House Republican leadership. The morning McCarthy tries to turn the page, conservatives slap him and his leadership team in the face." You know, there might be hope for McCarthy because the Freedom Caucus, again, self-identified, I've never seen evidence that they stand for freedom for anyone who's not a white conservative man. That gang, some of them were spotted going into the Speaker's office on Tuesday afternoon, close to 5 p.m. So this was Scott Perry, Dan Bishop, Byron Donalds, Chip Roy, and Michael Cloud. So my question here at this point in the game is humiliation McCarthy's secret power? If he has a secret power, it is enduring humiliation. McCarthy's kind of Greg from Succession, riding Tom's coattails, changing directions as the wind blows. He didn't have an easy time getting voted to be Speaker, and he lacks the consensus-making power of Nancy Pelosi-type Speaker. But after 15 rounds of voting, the most since the Civil War, he did finally find himself holding the gavel, however tenuously. Then came the debt ceiling showdown, initiated by representatives who identify as conservative, even though their actions are most often reactionary rather than rather than conservative. Kevin McCarthy was bailed out again by Democrats and by President Biden, who allowed McCarthy to set this narrative that he had won the debt ceiling deal hours before the president gave his version of events, which was really frustrating for supporters of the president, and I imagine members of the House Democratic Caucus who had been saying, all along what Biden had been saying, which was that they were not going to make a deal, that everything needed to be separate from the budget negotiations and the debt ceiling, which technically is what President Biden said happened. It sure didn't look like that from the outside, though. The deal, however, ended up being about a lot of sort of moving around of funds. I would say almost a shell game to kind of hide the truth from this, the Freedom Caucus. They're not the most kind of stable bunch, and so maybe McCarthy's trying really hard to manage them, but he couldn't get. They never even could really identify what they wanted. Every time somebody would say, okay, we could maybe work with that, they would change, they would move the goalposts. So McCarthy was kind of left in a bad position, which, to be fair, every Republican speaker has been since John Boehner. So Kevin McCarthy has shown this enduring strength as a politician, this one single thing. Humiliation rolls off his back like water off of a duck. Maybe he expects humiliation. Most people have some kind of core sense of self that won't allow this level of rather consistent humiliation, but not Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And in the end, if he has the power, he seems happy. He doesn't care how he gets there. But the question now is, how long will he be able to stave off the hungry beast of ever more histrionic right-wing demands? This has been Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. And if you're tired of billionaires controlling the news you see, and they are, and you want to support independent news that puts the people first, please consider subscribing to our Substack. Thank you.